Welcome back to another episode of the RG MMA Show. I'm your host, the Fight Analyst, and with me today is my man Matt Wagy, pro MMA fighter. How's it going, man?
Good man, how you doing? Nice, thanks for having me on the show.
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you being here and joining us on our fourth episode of the podcast. Just doing things here, talking about all things MMA and inside the news, back scenes of stuff. Just kind of get in the minds of what's going on in the MMA world. And I love having you on because you are an MMA fighter. You bring a wealth of experience and knowledge, and love to pick your brain and see how things go. And so you're coming off a big win recently for, I believe it was XFC over down in South Florida. How was that experience? How was the atmosphere? Because I know it was at, I believe, Killcliff FC, if I'm not mistaken. So how was that experience, and how was it? Getting a big win, and now you're 2-0 in your last two fights.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, man. XFC is a great promotion. It was good to fight for them. The venue was at a gym, so it was kind of like an Apex kind of vibe where they were not having, it wasn't open to the public, yet people still had a lot of people coming in because the cards were pretty good. I think they're doing a stream of my event the 28th of this month. They didn't post it, so I had my fight, that whole fight card happened, but they didn't post it on the streaming. So if you want to watch my fight, you can watch it on YouTube. I think they have another streaming service of some kind too. But I'll probably watch it just to get the official one. I think what is that guy? Luke Thomas did the commentary with Jessica Aguilar. So it was pretty good. They did a good job putting it
Okay.
together. It looked like the production was good. Um, I like the show a lot. I hope I can fight for them again. That'd be cool. They're doing a lot more at Killcliff, but they have regular shows where they go over to too. So it was a great promotion. I had a good time. The atmosphere was nice. Picked up a quick win. Can't complain.
Yeah, man, that's two quick wins, two first round finishes. You're looking better with age, might I say? I mean, you're looking great. You're progressing. I feel like you kind of. I know you're kind of still in your prime. You're just like about, I believe, like 33 years old. Do you feel like you're kind of getting better with age at this point?
Yeah, I mean, my prime was kind of cut from me from a lot of injuries. That's kind of how I got into coaching. I had really bad back injuries. I tore both my pecs. My comeback fight was against Diego Brandao, and he missed weight by 15 pounds. I fought him anyways. Then I had to get neck surgery after that. And then from neck surgery, I had my last two fights. Within my first fight that I won 2 fights ago was within a year of my neck surgery. And then my second fight was this last one here. So I haven't. I was injured from mostly from my back. Really debilitated me for years. I didn't get surgery, but I just had to take care of it. I had bad herniated disc in my lower back, multiple, and then that I fought multiple fights with that. I didn't know that I had a lower back injury. I thought I had like a hip problem. I was like, ah, don't be a bitch, everything's fine, you know. And I fought Brandon Longname with a back. I fought like my last 3 fights before the Brandao fight, I had the lower back problem, like it was really up, and then it got to a point where I couldn't walk for like 6 months. I was basically like crawling on the ground, and uh, I was doing jujitsu, just basically like on my back, like doing what I could, like sweeping people but not coming up, and like staying in the gym and teaching. It really made me a better coach because I wasn't able to show as much. I had to really like explain every little detail, and I was always pretty good at doing that anyways, but. Uh, I have a lot of knowledge that I've learned over the years, so I was able to just start really. And my first little project was Lucas. Lucas was my longest student that I trained. Charles has been a training partner of mine for a long time, but Lucas was my first like. I got him from like scratch kinda, and he stayed with me since I started coaching. Uh, about 5 years ago now, since when he came to Florida was pretty much when I started coaching. So he's been my longest tenured student so far. But yeah, it was injuries that took a lot of my prime away, and I still feel I'm in my prime. I feel like I have recovered. I'm healthy. I'm better than I was. So yeah, I feel good to go. I'm ready to make a run, see what I can do with it.
Yeah, you got a big fight coming up on the 28th of May, just a week's away. How you kind of conditioning and getting ready for this fight? I know you didn't fight long in your last two fights, so I feel like you're kind of really fresh and you have no injuries. You're kind of not really banged up. So like how you kind of getting ready for this fight with not too big of a notice and not too long of a fight
Wait,
camp?
which fight are you talking about? I don't have a fight scheduled right now.
Oh, my bad. I thought May 28th was something coming up.
So
So that's
that's the
that's
fight that
my fault.
happened. That's the fight that happened. Everybody has that confusion because that's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
okay.
So what they
Right.
did was they did two fight cards on that date that already happened, right? And they didn't
Right.
promote the fight that I had. I was on the second card. So they're trying to basically they did two cards at once, but they didn't stream my card. They only streamed one card. So half the card got streamed. The other half the card is getting streamed on the 28th. So if you want to see the replay of my fight, which didn't happen yet, but it happened already,
Gotcha.
kind of thing. It's weird. It's weird. I didn't really like how they did that because I wanted it to be like people could watch it live, but it's
Right.
they're posting that same fight card, which I think was the better of the fight cards, like as far as like the fighters, like the more credentialed guys, had some good fighters on there, had some former UFC guys on there, so it was cool. Um, but yeah, I'm not fighting until I'm looking for a fight. I'm trying to fight either for the next XFC, which is June 25th. They don't have an opponent for me right now. I had a bunch of people turn down fights with me. Um, and then there's also another show called 11 FC that's supposed to be coming here. Hector Lombard's supposed to be on it, Charles Rosa, myself. But they had to change the venue and the date, so we don't know when the date of that will be yet. It was supposed to be in August, but now we don't know. So we're hoping that that happens. But I'm staying ready. I'm training. I'm coaching. Uh, just staying active, and I'm always in the gym. I'll be ready. I just get a little fight camp together. I like to give myself a little bit of time, but there'll be fights on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, but going back to your coaching and talk about your longtime, pupil Lucas Rosa, what do you think what do you think about his rise right now? I believe he's still undefeated. I believe he's 7 and
6-0.
0, 6 and 0,
6
going
six,
looking to be 7 and 0 soon.
yeah, he's got
Uh
a fight June 13th.
and what do you think about that matchup? How do you like him going into this fight? He's going up to New England, I believe, for Cage Titans, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Combat FC.
Oh,
There's a
Combat
lot of
FC.
them.
Sorry.
There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's Combat FC. It's against this kid. I believe his name is Anthony Vasta. Probably the toughest fight he's had so far. But I still think Lucas is, leaps and bounds better than him. So we don't disrespect anybody. We respect anybody, has the ability to beat anybody on any given night. So you got to go out there with the mentality of respecting what they can bring to the table. But I think if Lucas does what he does and follows the game plan, he should handle him pretty quickly.
What do you expect from him after that? Because that would now be 7 and 0, like we're saying. And let's say he gets it done in the first round. 'Cause I'm pretty sure all 6 of his wins haven't even gone out of the first round. So
Yeah.
let's make it 7 and 0, 7 first round finishes. Where do you expect him to go after that? We still have a whole half of the year left. So what do you
Yeah.
kind of expect from it?
One fight at a time, man. That's all you can handle. I mean, as a coach, I just want him to focus on one fight at a time, and then everything else will line up as it should. I want him to be ready for when those big opportunities come, where he has that step up in competition. Uh, but he's a smart kid. He keeps on working to get better, and he knows that he needs to keep improving. So that's what makes him having this success as an amateur, as a pro. He takes it very seriously. He's very diligent. He's a very hard worker, and he keeps on trying to learn and improve. So as long as he keeps doing that, keeps improving and listening to what we tell him, he'll be successful.
Yeah, and he's not a fighter that's kind of sitting on his record, right? He wants to be active. He's fought a lot over the last few
Yeah.
years. So do you believe that has helped him in his growth and helped him, on this path of still being undefeated and potentially being in, the mindset and the eyes of the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, he just the main process of any fighter that I want is for them to just keep on improving. No matter how successful you are, if you're a UFC fighter, you're not done improving. But that's what happens with a lot of these guys. They think that they know it, and then they stop improving. They go to these big gyms, and they all just kind of beat each other up and stay the same. And I don't want that to happen to any of my fighters because I want them to constantly feel like they need to keep improving because nobody's perfect. And even when you think you're perfect, somebody else is going to pick up your style and evolve. And you have to be able to adapt and change in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to win fights, a lot of different people you're going to fight. This guy he's fighting is like 6'3", so he's gonna have a different obstacle that he has to worry about, different things he has to prepare for, and each fight's gonna propose different, pros and cons of things that they do well and you do well, and you got to implement the best game plan to win. So, and things don't always go the way that you expect them either. Sometimes you think you're better somewhere, and that guy might be better than you. You have to be better somewhere else. So, you know, there's so many things to improve on in martial arts, myself included. So, uh, with that mentality, you just constantly improve. It doesn't really matter about the opponent or the record. It's all about just keep getting better each fight, and you keep improving. You're going to be one of the best in the world as long as you keep working.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is a game of inches. You could be winning a fight until you're basically not. It just takes one little mistake, and then there goes everything. And then you kind of back to the drawing board, and then you kind of have to build yourself back up, and kind of keep grinding from there. That's what makes this fight game so incredibly hard for someone to really get into. Yeah, it may be kind of the easiest in terms of professional sports, but also yet the hardest in terms of you know getting there, staying there, and then making an actual living out of it. And it's very difficult, and you and others can really attest to that, especially going through all the trials and tribulations that you went through with all your injuries throughout the years. And with your career and moving forward, where are you kind of expecting yourself to be, maybe towards the end of the year or next year? Like, what are your goals? How can we see you? Where can we see you kind of in the future?
Each goal is right now, I mean, the first thing was to come back from the neck injury. That was the first goal. First was coming back from the back injury. I couldn't get any good matchups. The only one I got was Diego Brandao. He missed weight by 15 pounds. They paid me more money. I took the fight, you know, caused my neck problem. And then, now it's just one fight at a time. My goal itself is to obviously fight in the biggest promotions in the world. That happens to only be the UFC right now. But I know the politics and how hard it is to get into there. Um, it's more about just winning each fight, improving as a fighter, improving as a coach. I want to see how far I can go with it. Um, but my short term goals are to get 20 professional wins before I get another loss, or if I get two more losses, I'm done. Like I'm not sticking in here to just like stick in and just keep fighting for no reason. But I have like my own goals of wanting to get that 20th victory. I'm at 15 right now, so 5 more wins at least is what I would like to get, and how I get them, where I get them, that all depends on what promotions come out. I got all these offers for different promotions, different title fights, but the money's not right, and these opponents are really high level UFC level fighters for $1,000, $2,000. It's like I go to their hometowns. It's like, why would I do that? I'm not doing that. Like, you give me money to fight these guys, I'll fight these guys, but nobody's giving money in this promotion, so it's a very hard way to make a living. I'm not really doing it for the money, obviously, but everybody wants to make money, so it's a very, very tough spot for a lot of fighters right now because it's a monopoly and the UFC has cornered the market and they dictate the pay and they pay people. They really do. Like even the highest promotion, I mean, the best guys in the world, they get paid, but they have to sacrifice and they have to get pushed the right way. You got to play ball. You got to they got to do the politics. You got to kiss butt and you got to know the right people and have a certain style. There's a lot of different factors. Like if they don't like you, you can be undefeated like Monkayev, and oh, Hunter Campbell doesn't like you, you're gone. Like not that he's not exciting. He was an exciting fighter. They said he wasn't. That was why they cut him. But I mean, he had a nice knockout in Karate Combat right after that knockout. So I don't know if that's the case. I think it was mostly because him and Hunter had a beef, and now he's no longer going to be back in the UFC probably ever. As long as Hunter Campbell's there or Dana White, they have grudges. They say, nope, you're gone. Doesn't matter how good you are, we don't like you. Unless they see so much value with him knocking people unconscious, maybe. But like, it's it's a cutthroat business, and they bought out their competition. So we're kind of in a spot where it's UFC or bust, and they made it that way. Nobody's bigger than the brand. So yeah, we need a union. Nobody's gonna stick up for themselves because nobody's making money. So fighters are basically controlled by that one entity.
Man, it's so crazy when you think of it that way. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't really know the ins and
Well, how
outs.
would you? You wouldn't
Like,
know.
You know what I mean? So like the casual, like not the casual, but just like the everyday, fan won't really know the like the way you really have to go about things just to even get to the UFC and get and hope to get, like, you're only getting 10, 10, 10, to
Yeah,
as your first contract for
yeah.
your first 3 fights. So, and you have to
Two.
2 fights. Oh, okay, sorry.
You
Two fight
lose.
contract.
They can get rid of you anytime they want.
Yeah.
You have a contract for 5 fights, right? You lose two, they cut you. It's okay. But if you want to leave, oh no, that's not allowed. But you're an independent contractor. But you're also an employee whenever we want you to be an employee. So they double dip that. So you're an independent contractor when it's time to pay for medicals or it's time to take care of health care or people are going crazy and having problems. Oh no, you're an independent contractor. You're not an employee of ours anymore. But once you're signed to the UFC, oh, you got to wear our sponsors. Can you have your own sponsors? No. Can you have your own things? No. You have to take what we give you. If you fight back, we'll cut you. We'll get another guy from another country for the same pay. You have a manager that we don't like. Nope, we're not going to sign you. You got to work with our 2 or 3 managers or 4 managers that we like that won't ask for more money for the fighters, like Jason House or whoever the else that works with the UFC that they'll deal with because they won't deal with certain managers because those managers will push back and be like, hey, my fighter deserves more. They don't want that. They want the same guy that'll take, oh, this guy in Kazakhstan who's juiced up to the gills that has no money. He'll take it for 10,000 bucks. You know, we'll replace you. Nobody's bigger than the brand. So the only people that are bigger than the brand are the guys that we want to build, and we want to build them because Conor McGregor is exciting, whatever. I get all that. They want to have their own superstars, but there's no individuality. You can't have your walkout. You can't have your sponsors. You can't wear your flag. You can't do anything. But they can have a million sponsors plastered all over you and the ring. You see how many sponsors that the UFC has, right? Remember when they first had the sponsor deal, and they were like, oh, they didn't have that many on the canvas because they weren't sure how fighters were going to react. And then after they realized that the fighters couldn't do, they just started plastering it everywhere. And then they started plastering it on their walkout shirts. And the fighters don't get a percentage of any of those sponsors that are on the walkout shirts, that are on the shorts, unless they're like a superstar. Maybe they might get a Monster or something. Who knows? But you get your Reebok. Well, now it's not Reebok. It's what? It's Venom. So whatever little small percentage, just like I think the beginners, like the first 5 fights, get like 2,500 bucks for sponsors. That's nothing for a UFC fighter that could make. Some people would make $100,000 on sponsors from just having their banner or their fight shorts, and now they don't have that opportunity anymore. So it's like, oh, you can still have sponsors, just not for any of the fight stuff where anybody would want to sponsor you. It's like, okay, so I can have a sponsor on my social media. It's like, okay, whatever, you know which is a whole nother thing. But they can have all theirs and they can put you sponsored. Like it's man, it really is. Like I wish things were different, but it's a tough sport right now. And obviously
Yeah.
I'm if anybody's watching this, obviously the UFC will not sign me. So like that's a whole nother politics thing, like if they see this and they see me talking like this, I can go on a 10 fight win streak. I could be the best fighter in the world. They won't sign me because I'm talking bad about them. They'll cut people for saying something bad about the company. They'll take media members out for saying something bad about the company. Not just Ariel Hawani. Anybody who says, "Oh, that's a stupid question. Get this guy out of here." He just belittle you and call you names, and then now you won't have your credentials to go to any of those media things anymore. They get a bunch of yes men that'll just say, "Oh, Dana, how's Power Slap doing? Power Slap's doing great. Those numbers are fantastic right now." It's like, "Oh yeah, they're the worst. Nobody cares about it." But we'll ask you those questions because, "Oh, Dana, you had the best gate of all time. Will John Jones ever fight?" "Oh, you're out of here. Get out of here. You asked about John Jones about fighting. You're a piece of get out of here." So like everything is controlled between the media, the management. Everything is just kind of it's a big corporation. And now with them combining with the company that they got with WWE, they have so much money that you saw they just lost that lawsuit. They just had to pay like $500 million. That was a settlement. Imagine if they had to pay what they actually had to pay. It would have been a billions of dollars, like for the mistreatment. But now there's in a contract. All these other fighters can't sue now. So now all of that's cut out. So now that they had that one time, oh yeah, you can get that money. By the way, if you get that money, I bet you they don't sign you back. You know what I mean? If you go and collect that money, if you're an older fighter and you collect that money and they see you collected that money, first of all, you're old. We don't want you anyways. But that's their thought process. Except Alex Pereira, who was 37. Except John Jones, who's 37. It's all a narrative. We don't want to sign you when you're old because, except for these old guys that we like, that are big names that we have to sign, right? So It's a slimy business. It really is.
Man, it's tough out there. Like, and you want there to be competition, and PFL's
There's not.
trying to be the competition, but they're really not. They're not.
PFL screwed themselves. I think Don Davis, when he took over, it kind of they tried to go too big and they bought out Bellator, and that also took away another potential market for us that we could have gone to because Bellator was a good promotion. You notice now the UFC they signed Patchy Mix. I saw the first time that they mentioned Bellator was they put underneath Patchy's name, and this is another thing they do with the media, Bellator's final champion. They would never mention Bellator ever for any of the fighters ever. They'd be like, he'd be a champion in another
Yeah.
organization, because it was a competitor. But now that they know they're gone, they can promote final Bellator champion. That's just an extra little dig that they can say. And then they'll belittle the Bellator guys saying, oh, well, if he loses, it's because he was in the B leagues. It's like, but those guys, 100% in their prime, would have done well in the UFC. And a lot of these guys that come over have done well from the World Series of Fighting. Justin Gaethje from the WEC that they bought, all the lower weight classes, all the Strikeforce fighters, all the Pride fighters that the UFC bought were not UFC fighters, but they get credited for being UFC fighters. It's a narrative that there's no other competition, but there's lots of competition. And people think that the best fighters in the world go to the UFC because they're the biggest name in sport. I will agree that the majority of the best fighters are there because they have the money to pay for them. But you can find at least a few top 10 worthy fighters in these other organizations from ONE, from PFL, from Bellator that's no longer there, from even places in different countries. Like you'll find people, but they can't get in there because of the politics or they got cut for some reason here or another. Like there's a lot of situations like that. You think Mighty Mouse wasn't the best in the world when he went to ONE FC? He was still the best in the world. He lost a close decision to Henry Cejudo, but I bet you if he rematched Henry Cejudo, he would have won. They wanted to get rid of that whole division, and Henry knocking out TJ ruined that for them. But they wanted TJ to destroy that division. That was the goal.
Yeah, man. It's the politics and everything is just it's just crazy, to me, because there, like you said, there's so many great fighters outside of the UFC, and that they don't get their shine because of that. They don't get their money's worth because of that. Because of these other organizations, they just don't have, to me, the funds. Like
They
Patrick Mix
don't.
is a prime example. Yeah, he's into the UFC now, but do you
Yeah.
really think he's gonna be making a six-figure salary?
No.
No.
They offered the guy who beat what's his name? The guy who beat Pereira in kickboxing. They remember they were trying to bring that guy in. They were talking about
Yeah.
it. They were like, "Oh, this guy that beat Pereira." And then that guy said, "Well, they offered me 10 and 10." So I said, I'm making $100,000 doing kickboxing. Why would I take 10 and 10 to come to the UFC in a harder sport? And they weren't willing to negotiate or go up on their contract. He said this. And he's like, no, I'm just going to fight in kickboxing and make a bunch more money and be the one of the best fighters in the world here and get respected in K1 or wherever he's fighting. So, like, he didn't come because the UFC wouldn't pay him. John Jones didn't fight Francis Ngannou and didn't fight all those years because the UFC wouldn't pay him. Francis Ngannou left because the UFC wouldn't pay him. And then they only paid John Jones because Francis Ngannou left and they couldn't afford losing both. Because if both would have left to go on to the PFL or to somebody else, that would have been the best fight in the entire world right now. Still is the best fight in the entire world. But I guarantee you, Dana doesn't ever cave on the Francis Ngannou deal. He'll never bring him back because it would hurt his pride to say that he was wrong about that. So that fight will never happen. The Tom Aspinall fight will probably never happen. Only if John Jones really wants it to happen. They're not going to pay the John's being ridiculous, 100%. So like he doesn't really want to fight him. I think they should strip him. They haven't stripped him. They stripped Islam. They stripped all these other guys. They won't strip John because that's their cash cow. That's their last. When John Jones was fighting for the money, it was convenient that Francis Ngannou. He was scared of Francis Ngannou, according to Dana. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Dana said Francis Ngannou is the hardest hitting guy in the world. He hits like a Mack truck. He's the scariest fighter in the division when he had him under contract, and John Jones is just scared of him. That's what he said. And then John Jones got signed, and then all of a sudden now Francis Ngannou is scared of John Jones because he left to go to another organization and make more money. And that's the narrative that he pushes, and a bunch of idiots online, they listen to it. They get fed the brainwash propaganda, and then, oh, a bunch of B leagues. Everybody repeats B league because Dana White says, oh, they're in the B leagues, they're in the B leagues, they're in the B leagues. It's like, they're just as good over there. They're not like the talent pool. Obviously, like I said, like they have more money to buy. Probably the top 10, I would say, In the UFC, seven, I would say 7 of the top 10 would be in the UFC. Like of the percentage of fighters, 70%, 80% of the top fighters, and even more so now probably because they're buying out everything and everything's going under. But when there was still competition, they bought these companies for a reason. They bought Strikeforce. They bought WEC. They bought Pride. Pride was better than the UFC. Pride had better numbers, better fighters. All these legendary UFC fighters came from Pride. All these fighters came from Strikeforce. All the lower weight class fighters came from the WEC. So, I don't know. It's just about them selling a narrative and having a bunch of listen to it. So that's the way it is. If that's all you watch, that's all you're gonna get. So it's being plastered everywhere. So that's kind of the way everybody sees things.
Do you expect like the top talent from all these other organizations to eventually jump ship to the UFC? Like
I mean,
let's see, we
pretty
just
much
saw
are. They have to.
Apache,
They have to. They
we
have
saw
to.
Pitbull. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because like,
Pitbull's too old. By the way,
to,
Pitbull lost to Sergio Pettis, who's also not in the UFC anymore. He lost to Sergio Pettis, who's a 25er. And you
yep,
saw how they were building up the narrative. Oh, he was the best in the world at Bellator because he wasn't.
and
And he had his time. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but he was on
yes,
the decline in Bellator, and they
yeah,
brought him in to hype up and say, "Oh, look, this is the best Bellator has." It's like no, Patchy Mix, Aaron Pico, those guys who they're not saying much about Bellator. They're saying, "Oh, these guys are just young, talented guys." They're gonna gloss over the fact that they were Bellator guys, and they're gonna say, "Oh, well, they had their success when they were in the UFC," because nobody noticed it, nobody saw it. You know what I mean? So like, well, not nobody, but most
yeah,
people didn't see it. So you know, that's kind of the way that things happen, though. That's the way the business is. It's a tough sport. It really is. It's a
yeah,
tough business to deal with. And when you see all the behind the scene things and how they treat the fighters, how they treat the people, it's not all these other organizations, well, not all, but a lot of these other organizations like PFL, I really respected because when I fought for them, they treated all the fighters with respect. They put you in a nice hotel. They would, make sure you had everything, all these different things. The UFC, they have a bunch of people just kind of like bossing you around and telling you where to go and pointing you to A to B. They put you in a hotel. Like, they don't take care of the fighters. You can't stay and watch the fights after you fight on the card. Like, they
that's
kick you
nuts.
out because you didn't pay a ticket. Like, what do you mean? I fought on the event. I can't watch the event? No. Go back to your hotel room. Like,
Yeah,
fucked up.
I was at the PFL here in Orlando, and when these fighters are done fighting, obviously they go into the back, and they
They have
you
their
know
own little
they
area where they can watch the fights and eat
yeah
and do things. Respect.
they're hanging out right by me, right by like cage side. They're watching, they were getting some food, and they were hanging out, they were chilling, watching the fights, doing their thing. I mean, and then the UFC can't even just give them like there's a fighter section already in their
Yeah,
arena. You can't
could
let
have
them
easily
just
done it. You would think.
yeah, right?
No, they made every time they made Charles go back. He was in London, he couldn't stay. He was in the Apex, he couldn't stay. It didn't matter where it was. They have these people that are called the blue shirts. They're all walking around with their little shirts, and their job is to direct you from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here. And they get in trouble if they don't do their job. So they're super anal about it, right? And they're like, so Charles fought Damon Jackson in Vegas during one of the COVID. He fought like multiple times in different stages of COVID, and I cornered him in all of them. And one of the times he had that spinning back elbow on Damon Jackson, and there was blood leaking everywhere. It was the most blood I've ever seen live, just pooling all over the ground. And Charles's shorts were white, and they were completely covered red. It was his blood. The guy's blood was all over his whole body. And we're at the UFC Apex, which is basically, if you've been to the UFC Apex before,
Yeah, yeah, it's
it,
pretty cool
it's an
for
office
me.
building. It's an
Yeah,
office building.
it's very
It's an
small.
office building where it's a UFC office building
Yeah,
where they have their people that work there, and you just can come in there and you can use the little performance institute if you schedule like an hour in advance. You can, maybe go in there every once in a while. It's not for fighters, it's for all the
yeah,
people that work for the UFC. It's a giant office building. And they
yeah,
thought, oh, we can just put fights in here and, during COVID, make money from doing it that way and not having any venue or anything like that. So they would just do that. And they rented out this residence inn that was a really bad residence inn, and they would just have the UFC staff work there, but nobody else would work there. So if you need towels or anything, you don't have like a working jacuzzi, a working pool. There's like roaches everywhere. It's disgusting. And during that time, they were like, it was the first event, and Dana was on the thing talking, and me and Charles are warming up in a hotel room with mats down on it because that's what it was. And he's like, we got the fighters state of the art equipment, a nice warm up area, and we just look at each other. We're like, oh, this is the state of the art, high end. Little facility that they got us over here. It's really nice, state of the art. And then, but the spinning back elbow, he lands a spinning back elbow. He's covered in blood. These people escort him back to the doctor because they want to make sure they get that stuff taken care of, and they bring you to where they need to bring you. And he's like, can I get a shower? There's showers in the building. You could go to a shower. They're like, no, no, no. You got to go back to your hotel room. He's literally covered in blood. He's like, can I get a drink? There's body armor things that they have sponsored all over the place. The guy's like, let me see if I can find one. And he comes back. He's like, I couldn't find anything. So no drink, no shower. Get the back in your car. Go back to your residence and hotel, and go check in with somebody else who's gonna make sure you get this, this, and this, and then you can go do whatever. Oh no, you can't go do whatever you want because they had the rules with COVID. So they just kept the COVID rules made them have a chance to boss people around even more and control the fighters even more. So like when COVID happened, you had to do the testing and all that kind of stuff. Everybody coach corner, everybody had to do those little nose testings, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when COVID got like in Vegas was back open because he fought multiple times in different stages of COVID. When Vegas was back open, they kept the same rules. So like after he fought all those things, of course you can't go watch the fights. They had people in the venue that could watch the fights that paid like thousands of dollars for really cards, by the way. Like really, really like the Apex cards, thousands of dollars because people wanted to see live events. So they started letting people in for money. But fighters still couldn't see it. And then during Vegas when it was open, they wouldn't let him leave the hotel after he fought to go out and like go do things because they were in charge of him. He's like, no, you have to go. If you leave this hotel, you have to go somewhere else. You can't come back, and they won't shuttle you to a place. So you have to Uber your way there. They will only shuttle you to the Apex, and they will only shuttle you to the Whole Foods, and then they will shuttle you back, and then nothing else. So once that fight was over, he had to go get his own hotel room at another place just to go out and enjoy Vegas because he wasn't allowed to leave the hotel, even though everything else was open and everybody else could, and the fight was over and everything was done. Still couldn't do anything. So they were doing those kind of rules. I'm sure you can go out in Vegas now, but they were just being anal about the rules and how they controlled things. It was not pro fighter friendly. It was all about just herding cattle from here to here to here to here. You saw the Johnny Walker thing. Johnny Walker was on one of those cards. We was walking out barefoot. That was just one of the cards that Charles was on too. I think that might have been in London or one of those places. Maybe it was Vegas. I don't remember. But same thing. Charles had the same problem. Johnny Walker fought on the main card. He couldn't stay. He got rushed out. He didn't even have it. He had his shorts on and no shoes. They just rushed him out. Like, oh, you got to go back to your hotel. Can't watch the fights.
Bro, it's literally insane. And I've even heard instances where I'm not sure if this is true or not, but like fighters that fight in the Apex, they get X amount of tickets for their family, but they're
Maybe
only
now.
but they're only allowed to see that specific fight, and then when it's over, they gotta leave. They gotta leave.
But you pay for that. But I mean, I don't know. He didn't get any tickets. We
No,
had
he didn't.
at least at that time he didn't. I don't know. Maybe they do now. But yeah, I don't doubt that they'd kick the people out at that point too.
It's
Weird.
just it's hard to really like. You want to be a fan of the UFC, but then you kind of feel bad for everyone that's kind of involved, even the people that kind of work there, because I feel like it's drill sergeant stuff. You know what I mean? Even for like when the media is there too, everything's like cookie cutter. There's things you can and things you cannot do. You know what
No,
I
if
mean?
you say something, you'll get caught. It's no journalism. That's why they have all these little like influencers in there, just kind of asking, "Hey, Dana, what's your favorite flavor ice cream?" Like I think like that's like the real hard hitting questions, not about like, "Hey, what about the fact that you just didn't got cut out of that boxing deal that you were talking about? How about that? Why are you no longer with Turk Al Ashish? Why did they cut you out of that deal? You were supposed to do a thing with Noche right after. That was all in the books. Now they don't. They just said that they cut him from being the promoter. I guarantee you nobody asks that question. I guarantee you nobody asks why is John Jones not fighting? Because if they do, it'll be like, hey, like you're gone.
No,
Why is John
100%,
Jones
man.
not been stripped? Why is John Jones not been stripped? Everybody's asking on social media, why is John Jones not been stripped? If a media member comes up and asks that, they won't be back the next time. They'll be probably cut from that same interview. He'll just belittle you and call you, and that's basically how he handles things. It's very similar to Donald Trump, how he does things. Like, I like Donald Trump, don't get me wrong, but like the way that he handles media, very similar, and he learned that in that way. It's like, even if you ask a legitimate question, if he doesn't like it, he'll just call you names, say you're not informed and you're stupid, and that'll be the end of it. And then people will be like, "Oh, that's funny." It's like, yeah, I mean, okay, that makes him right, I guess. You know,
Yeah, and it sucks because like I've been there and I've had some instances where I'm like, should I or should I not say something before I get some type of backlash on social media for saying something maybe wrong, incorrect?
it
Because
makes
like
it makes
these,
everybody think about it, and that's why everything stays hidden. Like the fighters, like, and I don't know if people care that much. People just want to see fights. So like, I don't know. I think people, as it grows, I think people are starting to want to know like the behind the scenes stuff. But any fighter that says anything will instantly be backballed. Any media member, you say something wrong, you won't be invited back. So it's pretty tough. It's propaganda at its finest.
yeah, but like you said, monopoly, and they're able to do all of this because why not? I mean,
No,
who's gonna
they have
stop
the
them?
power.
Yeah,
Nobody.
no,
Dana makes
nobody.
billions of dollars now. Dana makes billions of
Oh,
dollars. He throws $100,000 on blackjack every night, and he brags about it. And then he won't pay a fighter more than 10-10 and say they'll never change the pay structure while I'm there. But he can take more money because the sport is a multi-billion-dollar company. As it grows, the fighters should be getting a higher percentage. They have the lowest percentage of any professional athlete in the entire world. There's no other comparison, and we
and
just have
it's
to take it because there's nobody that can fight back. Fighters have to be not selfish, which is so hard. Fighters are super selfish, and you're not making any money. So if you stand up, you're gonna have to go back to you. Most people work two jobs. Pantoja was driving Uber when he fought for the UFC title. Like, I don't know, man. Like, now he might not be, but he was talking about it. He's like, yeah, I had to drive Uber to support my family because I needed extra income. He was UFC champion, or is UFC champion. So, you know, this other guy that I
it
saw, remember, you saw that recent thing where that guy said, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job if I get $50,000." I was like, "Don't do that."
yeah.
But he did, But
He
he
did,
did.
yeah.
He's banking on himself. I'm not saying not to bank on yourself and go all in on the sport. You should, but if you need that job because you're not making money, don't think that extra 50K that you got one time off your 10-10 salary before taxes that you get every maybe 3 months if you're lucky, it's gonna really support you and a family. I wouldn't say it is. I think you have to earn it, so I get that part. But even if you earn it, like Daniel Marcos, he was 17-0, whatever. He was only getting like 20 something, 20 something after having like 5 or 6 wins in a row. They only go up in like 2,000 increments. So, and they have the right to not sign you anytime they want. So, or to cut you. And like I said, they only work with certain managers, and those managers have to play ball, or they won't get their other guys in. So like that's why they have all these guys that are management guys. That have you noticed? Jason House has like multiple guys fight each other on the same card. Like Charles was managed by Jason House, and he had 3 times in a row fought guys that were also managed by Jason House. And Jason House would just come over and pretend he gave up about every guy, and he would give them a box of crumble cookies, and as if that was like some nice gesture. But he would do it to his opponent too, and to everybody else. And then he takes money from both sides, win and lose, and then he'll just keep doing that over and over. That shouldn't be allowed, but nobody talks about that. Like, that's corruption.
Yeah,
You
it's
can't tell me
crazy,
it's not.
man.
And he
Yep.
works closely with Sean Shelby, and Sean Shelby will just slap him around if he doesn't agree with him. He doesn't stand up for the fighter. So you're never going to get the most money you can get because he answers to Sean Shelby. So if Sean Shelby tells him, no, I'm not paying this guy more money, he'll be like, okay. And then he'll come back to you and be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I couldn't. It's like, okay. And then when Charles got cut from the UFC, Jason House tried to keep him on because he wanted to keep money. And he couldn't do anything for him. He had no value in any other organization. He had no standing to get any kind of sponsorships. Like, That's what it ends up being. They're just a bunch of yes men that do whatever these guys say, and they'll reward them by giving them multiple guys that get signed. Does that make you the best fighter in the world because you happen to be managed by a guy who's friends with the guy? No, but you got in the UFC. So does the UFC have the best fighters in the world? I don't know. Half the time they probably do, just because of now having so many other promotions going under. Yes, I would say they have the best overall talent pool, but it's not doesn't mean just because you're in the UFC you're the best fighter in the world or one of the best fighters in the world. Doesn't mean that you're better than that Bellator guy that didn't get signed. That Bellator guy that's undefeated is probably just as good as that other guy that just got signed to the UFC undefeated. The only difference was he had a good manager, or he had a manager, not a good manager. He had a manager that would work with those guys who will not work for you or get you money. So that's just kind of the way that business is too. It's you have to have a lot of different things go your way.
Man, we're all as a fighter, it's just all over the place, and it's just I feel like it's impossible to make this like a long career. You know what I mean? It
Not
like
the easiest.
feels very impossible because like you said, you start at 10-10 on your first contract. Then let's say you get through the first contract, then you're on 20-20, and then what? Your third contract's 30-30, and
It
then
goes to 2,000 per win. So if you win a fight, you get to 12-12. You win another fight, you get to 14-14. You win a third fight, you get to 16-16. You lose, it probably doesn't go up. It probably stays at the same or it goes down. Who knows? You know, each fighter is different, and each deal will be different. Will they give a more exciting guy that they see value that's like the best guy from this country that sells a bunch of tickets? Will they give that guy a better contract? Will they give Sean O'Malley a bigger contract? Yes, absolutely. Will they give you the right matchups when they do that? Yes. Does that mean that that guy's the best in the world? I don't know. If Sean O'Malley were to fight Marab in his first fight, and then was to fight Aljamain in his second fight, and he got out wrestled, and he went 0-2 and got cut, would he be UFC champion? What about Conor McGregor? If Conor McGregor would have fought Chad Mendes his first fight, and he would have lost to a wrestler, and he would have fought Khabib his second fight, and then he got cut, nobody would know who Conor was. He'd be working as a custodian like he said he was doing before, and that'd be the end of it. They have the power to do that to anybody. So just because a guy goes 0-2 in the UFC, look at who they fight. These guys that have to build themselves out. If you look at Volkanovski's record and who he had to fight killer after killer after killer because they did not want him to win. Same with Marab. They gave you killer after killer after killer. They try to keep you from fighting the guys, and they just keep on giving you hard fights. And then if you lose, then it's like, oh, okay, well then now we can cut you. Lose two, yeah, now we can cut you. So it's a weird business. They control that narrative. So styles make fights, and that's just the way it is. So if you're able to avoid a certain style of fighter, like Alex Pereira never fought a wrestler. If you don't fight a wrestler and you're a kickboxing world champion, I bet you'll knock out a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of the way it works. But if you give that guy a good wrestler, oh, maybe he's not as good anymore. So they were using Alex Pereira on every fight card because they had no stars. He would save every single card. Now he's asking for more money, and now he's pissed at the UFC. You saw that?
yep.
Alex Pereira's pissed at the UFC now because they wouldn't give him his rematch or they wouldn't do something that he wanted, and they're starting to devalue him because he lost a fight. So,
Yeah.
and I really don't think that it's getting better with Hunter Campbell. I don't know him personally, but he seems like he's a slime ball. So he's going to be taking over more. Dana's close with him for a reason, so I'm sure he's going to have similar practices. But I know Sean Shelby's not really a good guy. If you couldn't tell, I'm not doing myself any favors for getting signed by the UFC right now. So,
no, but I mean, like
hopefully this
opening a
doesn't
lot of
reach
eyes.
too many people. I mean, maybe, hopefully.
I mean,
Hopefully it doesn't reach too many people.
but like you're opening a lot of eyes to things that consumers really don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things I never knew that you're talking about. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I've been watching sport for a very long time, and just like a lot of people, and they really haven't seen the ins and outs of how things work in this world of MMA, unfortunately. And it really sucks for the fighters that are put through this mess and having to kind of navigate where they should fight, how they're going to make money, is it even worth it, having to work multiple jobs, and it's just
Yes,
it's hard, man.
100%. So I mean, then people talk about you when you get knocked out and make you a meme. Like it's
Yep.
like okay, and nobody wants to fight in there. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure. It doesn't get the respect it deserves as far as that goes. It's a tough way to make a living. There's no doubt about that.
And then everybody, they sacrifice just to get to the UFC, and then you
Yeah.
know, and they feel so down on themselves when they don't make it, or they get knocked out in a big fight on the regional scene on their way to try to make it to the UFC, and you know the the trials and tribulations on the regional scene just to even get there
Yeah.
is so hard, and the anxiety and all the depression that comes along with wins and losses. You know what I mean? Trying to push through it, injuries too, and setbacks from things like that. It's not for the faint at heart to be to be in your shoes and other fighters' shoes for that matter.
No, not at all, not at all. But hopefully, with its growth, at some point, people will take a stand. Fighters, fans, whatever. It needs to be somebody, but I don't know how. It's a hard avenue. The only real avenue is to have all of the fighters, and then they make no money, and then they risk getting
Yeah,
cut. So I think somebody tried to do that one time. Ago, somebody tried to do like a little bit of a protest, and not everybody would do it, obviously. So they got a
yeah.
list of names of guys that would want to like do that, and then lo and behold, those guys happen to get cut. Like tell me that's not a malpractice. I don't know. Like they have their reasons. They'll say that it wasn't because of that. It was because he lost his last fight, or he didn't look exciting here, or he asked for too much money, or we just didn't like him. They can make any excuse up because they control the contract, which is when you sign a contract, it should be binding to both parties. It's not. It's only binding to one party. They can cut you after one fight if they want to. You have a 5-fight deal. You can't leave. You want to go somewhere else after your 2 fights. You got some name brand in the UFC. This other show's going to offer you $100,000. You can't go nowhere. You fight 5 fights. I think they have the right to match any contract that you get also. Like, I think, well, no, I think once the deal's done, they probably have some sort of thing. Well, what they normally do is if they value you, they'll sign you before your deal is up to make sure they lock you back in. And if they don't think they're going to sign you, they try to give you a terrible fight like they did with Nate Diaz. They tried to give him Khamzat on the way out. Remember that? And Khamzat missed weight by 8 pounds,
Yeah.
so they couldn't do that. Their plan was to ruin the value of Nate Diaz so he couldn't get money elsewhere and that he looked like a piece like, oh, look, he can't do it anymore. And they were forced to give him Tony Ferguson because of all that happened. But if he fought Khamzat, he gets mauled. First first round finish. That's his last fight in the UFC. That's his lasting legacy. You know what I mean? Because he wouldn't sign a deal with them. He said he wouldn't sign. He didn't want to sign. He wanted to go elsewhere, make more money. And that was what they tried to do. And thankfully, it didn't work out that way. And we ended up having a good swan song for Nate. But, that was the game plan. They do that for every fighter. If you're at the end of your contract and they think that they might not be re signing you because you said, hey, I want more money. I want to go elsewhere. Okay, here's Khabib. Okay, here's this guy. You're going to get the same pay to fight the harder guy, but we're going to give you a really bad style matchup so you look bad, you lose on the way out, and we can justify cutting you. So that's the game plan on that.
Do you do you feel that's kind of what's been happening to a lot of these, aging veterans, like Gilbert Burns for that matter, like this past weekend? Do you kind of feel he was kind of put in a position to where he needed to take that Morales fight, or he was like, yeah, give me whoever, I want to take the best of the best, or how do you think that kind of went?
A little bit of both, probably. I have my own relationship with Gilbert. I trained with him for years, and I personally don't like him very much, but I respect him as a fighter. I think he's a fake person, but other than that, he's a good fighter. He had a good career. He had to take the fight because he was on a losing streak, probably. Could he have probably waited and gotten another fight because of his standing? He probably could have taken a better fight. But when you're older, they like to give you the young up and comer. They do that with everybody, no matter who you are. They don't want you to look good on the way out. They want to build that next guy up. So they try to always do that with the older fighter. So he looked like he was outclassed and he didn't really want to be there. He looked like he was dejected before the fight. He probably should get one. Maybe they'll give him a nice retirement fight if they value him and like him. But who just Alex Caceres just left. They don't do anything for any of the guys that retire or leave. There's no like oh nice, that was a nice career. Thank you for your service. It's all just like UFC has removed X. UFC has removed X. And then that's
Yep.
how you get remembered, like it's Jose Aldo retires from, some decisions and then they're like, okay, whatever. Like there's not maybe they'll do something for Jose. I hope they do. But it's there's a couple things where they do these little nice little moments for people after the fact, years later or months later, sometimes, but not for everybody. Like there's a lot of guys that don't get appreciated, that just get forgotten about because they just cut them and they act like they never knew them again. And then when they have these health problems or these other issues, they don't take care of them. They don't respect any of it. It's not because we had all these fights and he had all these wars that he has these head problems. It's because he was doing drugs. That's why BJ's up. It's like, I don't know if that's the reason why, man. I'm sure he's doing drugs, but it's also because he got a lot of head trauma from all the wars over the years. Should the UFC be taking care of BJ? I think so. Like, should the UFC be taking care of Nick Diaz after what they did to his career? Probably. Are they going to? No. Like they don't have any obligation because it's in their contract that you're not an employee and it's not our fault, which makes no
Yeah.
sense because they benefit off it. They make a lot of money off these fighters and they don't pay them what they're worth when they're there and they don't take care of them after. So, that's the business we're in.
Yeah, it kind of it's that's why WWE and UFC go hand in hand. Same thing. They don't take
Yeah.
care of the old WWE wrestlers when they're
Yeah.
old and they're going through all the the head
Yeah, but they,
trauma
they
and all
but
the
they
stuff.
get paid significantly more. Significantly more.
That's true. That is
Significantly
also
more,
true.
not even comparable. And, yes, it's damaging. Their bodies go through a lot. I respect the professional wrestlers, but it is still a script. You are doing things
Yeah.
that you practice and that you know. It's not the same as going out there and getting your head knocked off by somebody that you trained for months to get ready for and actually taking that head trauma and really actually taking it. You're taking a lot of fake, they are taking things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not devaluing the punishment
Yeah.
that the professional wrestler takes because they take a lot for entertainment. The new age, though, I don't think they do as much, and they make a lot more money than anybody. And I really think the new WWF is just terrible. It's not even like worth watching. They don't have, they don't put themselves at risk as much because nobody, everything is so politically correct nowadays that I think wrestling is. I really don't understand how it's still thriving in my opinion, but people obviously still watch it. I don't really get it. I like it to. I watched it at the Attitude Era. That was great. Like the older WWF, that was great. Now it's just like political correctness. Nobody says anything that's like upsetting to anybody. Nobody does any like real dangerous matches anymore that I've seen anyways. Maybe they do, but I haven't seen like the what was the T not TNA but ECW, those crazy hardcore matches. You don't see those anymore, really. You don't see like the craziness that you used to see. So I don't know, and they're making a lot of money to do that. So I mean, is CM Punk as tough as a UFC fighter? Did CM Punk deserve to be in the UFC? No, that was proven pretty quickly. CM Punk had no grappling background, nothing. He just jumped in there because of name value alone. And he got paid a lot more than most UFC fighters just to go in there. And good for him. I respect him for doing it, but, you know, it's not the same.
And the world of MMA, man. The business side is it's so dicey, so fluky. It's not right. You know what I mean? But as
It's where we're at, man. It's where we're at. You
as
got to deal with what you have. That's all you can do.
exactly.
And hopefully at some point, I'm hopeful that with the name being, with the UFC growing, it's becoming so mainstream. Everybody's wanting to get involved in it, that people will start to learn a little bit about what actually is happening. And maybe some change will happen. I don't know when or if it will happen. I don't know how it will happen because they've done a great job of making sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's a tough way out, man. It really is. It's a tough way out of the sport. Um, yeah, I'm probably not going to be going to the UFC after this interview.
Well, we can only hope that's not true, and
Yeah,
you still get your shot because I mean, at the end of the day, it should
should
only
be the
be
best fighters in the
about
world. Should be the best
exactly.
fighters in the world fighting the best fighters in the world, and that's
Exactly.
why I disagree with that narrative because it's not. It's not always that.
No, there's a lot of politics that go into it as well, which really does suck because it should be the best versus the best, just like NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. It's always the best going against the best. It's never, someone that's.
And to be fair, the
Mhm.
sport is newer, so like yes, all of those things. And one thing about all those things that you named is they all have a players union. They all have fought for the ability to get the money that they need. And the fighters are in a position where they can't do that or they won't do that because fighting is such a selfish sport and a lot of fighters are really selfish and they do not think about the other people.
No.
Some do, but it's not enough to where they're going to risk their whole livelihood on it because they barely make a livelihood. You don't make enough money to sacrifice it. So like it's a really it will take a lot to get that to change. I don't know how it will, to be honest with you. It's a very, very hard thing. The only real way is to have all of the fighters do it. But I feel even if that happens, they'll get more fighters from other countries and just
Yep.
retool it, or they'll try
Yep.
to, you know. But like, you need the big names, but they're losing big names, and the reason why they're losing big names is because of the way that they're handling business. They don't want anybody to be a big name. Dana's the big name. The UFC is
Yep.
the name, the brand. Dana is the popular guy. Everybody knows Dana. Nobody knows XYZ fighter unless they build them up their own way. They control that. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's true because there's nobody's the face of the UFC. Like when you have, like other professional sports, there's like normally players that
You'll
are the face. You know
They
what I
don't care
mean?
about Roger Goodell in the NFL. Nobody goes, "Oh, I really want to see Roger Goodell's interview." Everybody's got to
Right.
see his post game, post Super Bowl interview. I really can't look. I can't. I really look forward to that Roger Goodell, what he has to say about how the NFL is doing, how Power Slap is doing. You know.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part. Like everybody, like Dana, be like, "Oh, I'm going live at sometime today." Everybody's literally waiting all
For him to
day for
announce
that
fights, yeah,
notification.
yeah. He
You know
loves
what I
that.
mean?
He loves that. He makes it about himself. He's making so much money off the fighters, just and not giving back. He's not returning the favor. He's taken all of the benefits from it, and he's built a great organization. I'm not taking away what he's done for the sport, uh, for bringing it to the mainstream. Like he's done a lot, and he deserves to make money. I don't think he shouldn't make money. I think Dana White has earned what he's gotten, but he should understand that it's because of the fighters that he has the success. He never fought a day in his life. He liked to pretend that he would have fought Tito Ortiz. Tito Ortiz would have killed him. Would have been a massacre if they would have fought. Dana White is a cardio kickboxing instructor that happened to be friends with the Fertitta brothers. That's how he got famous. That's how he got his shot with the UFC. He had a really rich friends that bought the UFC, and he got put as president because they wanted to let him be president. And he took it and ran with it. But the UFC was there before, and Pride was bigger than the UFC for a while. But the Pride had their problems because of the Yakuza. That was why that happened. I mean, the Yakuza got them in trouble, and for some reason that caused them to go under. And Pride had their own problems, so they would make it more like, you know, 500-pound guy versus this guy. I mean, that was, more of like what do you call those kind of fights? I don't know what's the word. Kind of like WWF, kind of, but like not.
Yeah.
They had wrestlers in there, like fake wrestlers. They had Alberto Del Rio fought somebody in there one time. I remember
Yeah, I
he
remember.
got knocked out, but like they had plenty of like Japanese professional wrestlers that would actually go fight, and they had some things about them being rigged, but I don't think all of those are rigged. I saw a lot of people getting soccer kicked to death. So Rampage getting knocked out of the ropes. Remember Rampage getting knocked out and then just like falling out of the ropes and just being dead, and then Rampage
Yep.
slamming that guy and killing him. Like those weren't scripted. Fedor getting thrown on his head. Like, but Rampage was a UFC fighter, right? He wasn't a Pride fighter. With Vanderlei Silva, he was a UFC fighter. He wasn't a Pride fighter, right? Like all these guys got their name in Pride. Crow Cop, all those guys in Pride that were successful. Dan Henderson. Hector Lombard was in there, by the way, too. But when Hector was on a 27 fight win streak, they devalued it and said, oh, he's in Bellator. It doesn't count. He won in Pride, too. He was winning and being one of the scariest fighters in the world. Then he came to the UFC and he was older, didn't have as much of a success as he did, but he was still a very dangerous fighter. Got a lot of respect from everybody who he fought. He would almost kill everybody he fought. So, you know, Hector Lombard was a Bellator champion that they brought, and he was late 30s, you know, because they couldn't get him out of his contract, and then that's how it is. Justin Gaethje, World Series of Fighting, PFL champion. Now he's a UFC champion, so it's different, right?
Yeah, they killed the narrative before these fighters' careers. You don't know about their previous careers. You just know about their current UFC.
Yeah. Once Patchy Mix is successful, they won't talk about his Bellator career. Yeah. Patchy Mix has the ability to be great. By the way, they gave him a hard first fight. They gave him a hard stylistic matchup for his first fight, to where they want to see if he'll lose, and then they can say, "Oh, look, this is a Bellator guy that's not that good," and then if he wins, then they'll not mention the Bellator part, you know, and that's what their plan is. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're trying to see is Patchy the real deal, because that is a very tough. People think Patchy's gonna run
short notice too.
Mario Batista. Yeah,
no, Mario Batista's good.
Mario.
Not easily, and he just held Jose Aldo against the fence. It has the ability to make the fight very boring too, to where you can say Patchy's not that good if he does what he did to Aldo. Does that make Aldo not that good? No, but you know they'll change the narrative when they want, you know. So yeah, we'll see. I think Patchy will still beat him, but because Patchy I think is really championship level. I remember when Merab won his title against O'Malley. Merab actually said Patchy Mix is the best fighter in the world that could compete against him for his belt. He didn't mention all the UFC guys. He said actually the best guy is Patchy Mix, but he's not in the UFC right now, so I don't have to worry about him right now. But he said that's the best contender at that time for him, and right now he still is, right? So, you know, but they won't mention that because he was in Bellator. So now that he's not in Bellator, they can say, oh, we got him. If he wins this fight, they'll probably promote him to be, I don't know what Mario Batista's ranked. Maybe they'll give him one more, but they'll try to make the title fight probably if he keeps winning, of course, because Patchy is good enough to be champion for sure.
Do you know what I figure they're gonna do, which is really messed up? I feel they'll give Mario, and if he gets through Mario, they'll give him Corey Sandhagen.
Maybe
instead of giving Corey the title shot that he wrongly deserves at this point, but
they don't like
it's not about deserving anymore, and actually never has been.
No, and he looked bad against Umar, so that's an excuse too. He got dominated in that fight. So
and then you give him another wrestler. You know what I mean?
Does Corey have a fight scheduled or no?
Nope.
Nothing. They're just not giving him anything. They're giving it to O'Malley. O'Malley deserves it, dude.
Yeah. By getting 50-45.
Yeah. No, it was very deserving, and he got a nice title defense against Marlon Vera, who was not even in the top 5. I think he was like 8. That was his first title defense, and he lost to Peter Yan, but they gave him that decision. And but they like you. They can make things happen. They can push things a certain way, and nobody's gonna question. And if they do, they'll just not listen to you anyway. It doesn't matter. So. We only put on the best fights in the world, dude. Only the best. Except Francis Ngannou and John Jones, and any other fight that we can't get because we don't want to throw money at it, or we don't like the people. Fedor Emelianenko, what about him? Oh, he wasn't the GOAT. He was never the GOAT. Because he never made it to the UFC. That's what he says. That's what Dana will say. And they would say all these things about, oh, he was difficult to deal with. Yeah, he wanted money. He wanted money, dude, and you wouldn't give him money. And you don't like the fact that he wanted money and he saw value, and he said that he didn't want to work for the guy because he didn't respect Dana White, and that's the reality. But if you don't respect the guy, that what are you gonna do? You don't respect the guy, you're not getting paid. Why are you gonna go fight? It's the same reason that the guy, like I said before, that Pete Pereira said he wouldn't come. It's like, you're not gonna give me the same contract everybody else is getting, and then promote me as his next legend slayer like you did with Pereira for Adesanya. You did the same formula. Like, you're going to give me the base pay and give me a hard fight on the Apex for my first fight, even though I'm like a multiple-time champion kickboxer who knocked out Alex Pereira. Like, how does that value me to go into the UFC? Makes no sense. And like, oh, he just didn't want to test himself. He just didn't cut it. It's like, no, he didn't get paid. Same thing that all the other reasons are. Didn't pay the guy. Didn't pay the guy what they were worth. And then you only pay the guys when you have to pay them. And then that's how it worked. And now we got John Jones' situation. So now we're with that, where you made him fight Cyril Gane, who didn't deserve a title fight. And he's going to get another title fight that he doesn't deserve against Tom Aspinall because John Jones won't fight. And the heavyweight division is there's no fighters. So the best fighter you could get is Francis Ngannou. You won't get him because Dana will have to then admit that he was wrong and pay him a boatload of money, which he didn't want to pay in the first place. So that fight I don't think will ever happen unless it goes somewhere else. Yep. And the only way that'll happen is if John gets out of this contract, which I don't think he can. And I don't think he wants to fight Francis Ngannou to begin with. I think John is ducking all of these guys. All of the best fighters in the world, he's been doing that. At least to the heavyweight division. Maybe the light heavyweights he would fight, but he would fight past their prime guys. He would fight guys like at his stage, what Aspinall and him. He would get the A side. He'd make sure he'd have the leverage. And then, he lost, I think, to Dominic Reyes. I think he might have lost to Thiago Santos. But he didn't, so he's undefeated. He's the GOAT. He got caught for steroids multiple times. Oh, it's fine. No big deal, I think that's disrespectful to the sport. Now we don't even have USADA anymore. They kicked USADA out. You know why they kicked USADA out? Because Conor McGregor said, I want to come back into the testing pool. And USADA said, you have to go through 6 months of testing. And they were talking at that time about Conor McGregor coming back. So they instantly cut USADA. And they said, oh, we have our own body now. So now the UFC does their own testing. I don't know how that works. I don't know who that is. I don't know how that's followed through. I feel like they probably have people doing some sort of testing on some fighters, but I don't know. It's not regulated anymore. There's no other independent body that's not affiliated with the UFC. So tell me how that's not controlled by the UFC. If somebody tests somebody and they want him to fight, they'll just say, oh, it's fine, no big deal. He didn't test. How are you going to know? Yeah. So now that's a whole nother thing. They got rid of the USADA. That was another thing that they would talk about USADA, because USADA would have all these rules and make these people do things because they wouldn't let the UFC do whatever they want when these guys got tested for doing all these things. Like, that's the job, though. It's what you should have. Now, USADA was kind of annoying. They would come to everybody's house and, do things at 5 a.m. and all that kind of stuff was fucked up. But, at least there was regulation.
Man. You gave us a lot here, and I appreciate you. I know we kind of went a little bit over time, but I meant
I'm ranting, but that's how it works.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate this. This is great talk, and I love talking to you about all this stuff because, like I said, it gives me more knowledge about the the behind the scenes stuff that I would never be able to get anywhere else. And like I said, I don't want to take more of your time, so I'm gonna let you go. But before I let you go, I want to know if you have a message out there for everybody that's supporting you, that's looking to see you get back in there and see you thrive and be the best fighter you could be.
Yeah, man, I appreciate everybody who's looking out for me and supporting me and wants to see my journey. My next fight I'll be posting on social media at Matthew Wagy. I changed it to my name, Matthew Wagy, W-A-G-Y. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, send me a message. I will be posting when my next fight is. I hope to have some consistency. I'd like to fight for XFC again, but nothing's on the books. I'd like to fight for that show I was saying before, 11. Hopefully that comes up. Whatever fight comes, I'll be ready.
All right, man. Thank you so much for today and this podcast, and I appreciate you. And we'll hope to see you soon, fight soon, and be back on the podcast very soon as well.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Have a good one, man.
You too.